Welcome to Racing Roots with Hamm. Tonight's episode is brought to you by
Jersey Cape Yachts.
All right, very good, Phil. And if you want to reach Jersey Cape Yachts, check them out on jerseycapeyachts.com. They have all the links to their social media there. But tonight I have my guest, Larry Pollard, and Chase, your son, Chase, right?
Yes, sir.
Make sure I got that right.
Yep.
Yes. Because Phil asked him if you brought your brother with you, I think it was. So, yeah.
Compliment to me for sure.
Yes. But it's a pleasure to have you here tonight with us.
Well, that's good to be here, yeah.
So I was explaining to Larry, when the show starts, it's okay. Everything kind of calms down, because here I am trying to get everything ready. And, we had a little meeting tonight and all that kind of stuff. But it's all good. Everything's good now. And I see we got a lot of our friends on here tuning in. Rachel in Charlotte, R.D. Ford's up in New Hampshire, and Brad Downard's in Ohio, and Chad Hyder is in Ohio as well. Paul Rodriguez is in Port St. Lucie, Florida. Caroline Troutman's here in Statesville. Dickie Dennis is in Virginia. He's the y'all remember the fence climber in 2014 at Richmond?
That's our man, is it?
That's the one, yes. So he says, whatever. He's talking about something, no telling. So yeah, thanks y'all for tuning in. Sissy Odell here in Statesville. And so here's the deal. If y'all got any questions, y'all can ask them right here, and we'll answer the questions as the show goes on. You know the deal. Kenny Cole's back. Do you know Kenny Cole's back? Carbon Kenny?
Don't believe I do, no.
Kenny's Components.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he did. If you ever need any carbon fiber work done.
Really?
He's the man, yes. He did that years ago back in the old Sabco days. What's that, Phil?
No, I was just welcoming Kenny to the show.
Yes. What's up? Well, welcome to Kenny Cole's back. And Sissy Odell says, yeah, that's good to see you and your guest, Hamm. Hey to Phil also. And Phil's off camera, but you know what? He's got a good face for radio, so we'll keep him over there. I'm just kidding. I'll actually turn the camera here in a little bit, let him see, because I think he's got some shout outs.
That's all right. I'm still on wanted posters if you want to see me.
Yeah, that's right. So Chad Hyder's on here. Chad does a little bit of the e-racing stuff, so he's getting ready to start back up with the Canadian series.
Huh.
And so, yeah, maybe he can tell us a little more about that, and I'll read it. So, yes, we have Larry Pollard. So, Larry, what I like to do is just learn your story, your history, like where you were born and raised, and what got you interested in racing, and who was your biggest influence, those types of things.
Yeah, just loved racing my whole life. Obviously, my dad was a big racer, so I was infected at a real early age. Mm-hmm. I was born in Vermilion, Alberta, Canada, and Dad raced there, won a bunch of races, and then we decided to move to British Columbia, Canada, where at Western Speedway was a little nicer climate. And so he had a little auto record business, so we were always into cars, and we built our own stuff, and I was like 13. So yeah. And we moved to the West Coast, and we started racing at Western Speedway. So that's where my roots really come from.
So he had an auto record business, and let's see, Ricky Rudd's family had a junkyard. His dad.
Yes, sir.
So I just kind of made that connection in a way. So is that how you got hooked up with Ricky Rudd by chance? Any connection there?
No, we raced in Victoria for years, and on the west coast of the United States, Riverside, Yakima, Monroe, places like that, we raced a lot. We won a lot of races. I mean, over the years, back home, won a good many races. And in the January race at Riverside, we go down there, and I never did race there, but I went down with some of the guys from Canada that raced there, and with Roy Smith and Ross Surgeon and them boys, and I got to hang out in the pits, obviously, with Richard Childress was in the next pit to us at the time.
Oh yeah, cool.
So, and for somehow I had this kind of a knack for the ability to change tires pretty fast. So
okay, yeah.
So anyways, a friend of ours from back there at the time was Gary Nelson. Mm-hmm. Well, he was helping us with Roy Smith's deal, and I guess Richard Childress and him knew each other. So Richard Childress came to Gary Nelson and said, "Man, we're starting this new deal with Ricky Rudd and Piedmont Airlines, and I need some help. I need some people." And Gary Nelson, he says, "Man, call this guy from Canada. He can do anything. He's working a car, whatever,
Yeah.
So, and I didn't know about that part until he called me.
Yeah. That reminds me of when I was talking to Cliff Champion last week, and he was like, But he was like, well, I didn't really know anything about racing, but I was doing, quite a bit of drag racing and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then he knew how to adjust valves on a car, so he jumped in there and did it.
Right.
So then he kind of got that reputation right off that, well, he knows how to do something.
Right.
So that kind of sounds like that's how you got your start too.
Absolutely.
You knew how to you could change tires, or you could do just about anything, it sounds like.
Yeah, my dad and I had a little repair shop back in Victoria, and I just bought it from him.
Yeah.
And he was going into retirement. I just bought a house. And then one night I was at home and Richard Childress called and said, this is Richard Childress and blah, blah, blah. And he says, I'd be interested in coming to work for me or starting a new deal. And I says, well, I'm kind of, didn't know if it was true or not. Yeah. But I said, well, how long have I got? And he said, I got to know something in 2 weeks.
Oh,
so
man.
I said, okay. So I went to Dad the next day. I said, Dad, you want to come out of retirement? And I said, just run the place.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to try this deal because I love racing. It wasn't for any other thing than just love racing, Yeah. So, of course, my dad, he'd do anything for me. And he said, yeah, I'll do that. So I flew to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I was going to meet this man in a purple jacket. Didn't know Richard Childress from a house cat.
Yeah.
So I flew into Winston-Salem. I met Richard, and it just kind of started from there,
Yeah.
So I called Dad back about 6 months later. I said, well, you got another 6 months in you to look after the shop?
Yes. So I was going to ask you how long it took you before you sold your house. I guess you still had it.
Yeah, I sold it right away.
Okay.
That worked out good because I sold it before I left. I had a brand new 80 Camaro I just bought.
Okay.
And I gave that to my mom to drive while I was on this little excursion down here.
Yeah.
And then Dad went back into the shop. So I was looked after for a year, and at the end of 1 year, I asked Dad again. He said, well, let's just sell it. So we sold it. And
What color was it?
it was an orange Camaro with the yellow and the red and the other yellow and the other orange and red stripes on it. It was a pretty cool looking car.
Oh, yeah. I've got one in my shop. That's why I was asking. But it's red.
Right.
Yeah, it's a Z28 Camaro that
with the 3 stripes.
You know what? I don't remember seeing the stripes on it though. So
okay. I have a photo of it.
There you go. Yeah, I got to pull the engine out, rebuild it, and put it back in. So
right.
Yeah, but it was I love those things too. But you got yours when you were new. All right, so that was a pretty quick end. How old were you at that time?
26, I guess, when I left Victoria to come to work for Richard Childress. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were like a fish out of sea. Well, no, I wouldn't say that. You were it was a totally different world, I guess, from where you grew up in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I landed in the airport in Winston-Salem, met this fellow with a purple jacket.
Yeah.
And just obviously turned into a good friend. But you couldn't hardly understand anybody. It was just a different way of life.
Yeah, sure.
And back then we were working the shop one day. I just started there, got my new deal. Richard put me up in a motel for 3 or 4 weeks before I found a place to stay. And one day the phone rang.
Yeah.
And back then there's like 5 guys that work on these race cars to prep these cars for Winston Cup race. It wasn't no 200 people.
Oh,
it
yeah.
was like Will Lynn, David Smith, Robbie Johnson, myself, and I'm forgetting somebody, Kirk Shelmerdine.
Okay, yes.
And then old Bill was a motor guy with his helper, Stan. Bill, I can't remember his last name. Anyways, there was like 7 total, and then old Dwight was in the fab shop, and that was a Winston Cup team. Everybody had to do something of everything.
Right.
But anyways, we're all working one day, and there's one phone in the shop. It's not like there's 3 secretaries out in the front lobby answering phone for the race team.
Right.
This is Richard Childress Racing.
Yeah.
Phone rings. Hey, Larry, grab the phone.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. The first time when I used to call a race shop, when I was at a dealership trying to get a job in racing, and it was kind of the same way at Savco. There was only like 10 people working there, and it was like they would answer the phone out in the shop. So I was like, what's up with that?
Yeah.
But anyway, that's cool. Richard Childress. So was he driving then, or was he?
No, he owned the team.
He was on his team.
Ricky Rudd was driving it for us.
Okay, all right.
That was the first year for Piedmont Airlines. They got the Piedmont deal.
Was it 82 or something like
82,
that? 82,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was pretty funny. But I answered the phone, and this fellow was on the phone, and he was one of Richard's buddies or something. And I could not understand what he's saying. I says, hey, somebody else better grab this thing because I can't make heads or tails of what this fella's saying.
Yes. So let me imagine the way it was when you started working in the shop. You ain't from around here, are you?
Yeah, that's it.
He probably said, "Eh."
Yeah, way to go, eh?
Hey, that's right. Hey, that's why I always say good day, mate, because my grandmother was from Australia.
Oh, yeah.
But whenever I meet somebody from Canada, I say good day, mate. Yeah. Yeah, there's the Camaro right there, the one I'm working on.
Yeah, that's about an 80, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, yes.
Yeah, they're cool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't run real good, but
Yeah, they weren't much for a runner.
Well, I'm going to fix that because that's what I do.
That's right. You're the motor guy, so you can fix that problem.
That's right. So back then, who was the motor guy for y'all over there? I know you said Bill.
Bill Carter.
Okay.
Bill Carter. Yeah, and he had a fellow, just a young fellow that helped him. His name was Stanley. I can't remember his last name.
Yeah.
And then a wild guy called Bob Gorell would come in at nights and do our cylinder heads for us.
Okay.
And that's how small of a deal it was back then. And you know, you had one good set of cylinder heads, that was your qualifying cylinder heads for the year. You know what I mean? That you didn't have 8 or 10 engines to go pick. You know?
Yeah, right. And then a lot of times the drivers knew that was what they wanted, that
motor,
same
right.
heads. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You had that one cylinder head for qualifying for the year. Now let's advance to just a few years ago. David, can you give us a perspective of what would have been in the shop for one car for the year qualifying heads?
Yeah. So I think I pick up what you're saying is I remember the days where we had the drivers would say they want that engine. Like they would get out of the car and they would come in our shop and say, listen, that engine we had this past weekend, that's the engine I want. And we would give it to them. Sometimes we didn't always give them the same heads, but but nowadays the things them asking that, it's like, nah, forget it. You're not going to get the same engine. Yeah. And but on the flip side of that, whenever Penske wins, if it's a milestone race, whatever, 100th win or whatever, then they want that engine. They want everything exactly the same, but they want us to rebuild it. I say us, meaning when I was at Roush Yates, we would rebuild the engine with all the same parts unless something was tore up, but they would get the same heads and everything was the same. Right. So put it back in and send it. And some other things that probably statute of limitations isn't up yet to tell you about, but one of these days I will. It just tells you how great Yates family is on some of that stuff. Oh, yeah. So, yeah. But anyway, yeah, it's very cool. All right, so Brad's, what's up, Brad Downard in Ohio? I thought there was a question there, but it says...
There was one question from Rachel Rodman. She wanted to know how much interest in racing there is in Canada compared to America with NASCAR.
There it is.
Very knowledgeable. Yeah, they're big time race fans in Canada. There's a lot of people really follow NASCAR. The local racing in Canada is big. They get a real good following of their spectators and stuff. It's really a big deal.
I think it was 2019. I shot the IMSA tour, and we were at the Canadian Motorsports Park, and it was packed. I mean, it was amazing. Yeah. And then I remember when they ran in Montreal several years ago with the Busch Series, and then 2-3 years in a row, that place was just unbelievable, the fans. And anytime Jacques Villeneuve took the lead, the stands went wild.
Yeah.
Oh, do you know Pete? Is it Pete Gebhardt? I have a mind blank right now. He raced in CASCAR, I guess it was, because there was the Canadian NASCAR.
Yes, sir. You're right. Yeah.
So, and he raced up there. I have to remember what his name was. Anyway.
Toronto or area.
And he moved down here and was living over in the Mount Olla area and was still working some in racing. But it was I'm pretty sure it was Pete Gebhardt.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah.
So, yep. So I was going to try to pop with some of these pictures that you had sent me, and I'll still work on that. But so tell us about your so you worked over there, Richard Childress, and Ricky Rose, the driver. I sent him the link, so he could be watching right now. Yeah. So what's up, Ricky? And so he was the driver, and you stayed there for how long? Did you?
Just the 1 year.
Just the 1 year. Okay.
Yeah, Ricky's my hero, man. I love Ricky Rudd. He's a racer's racer in my books. I love the way he raced, and
he's tough.
He's just tough. He's just a great guy. You know what I mean? And he get up on the wheel. You know what I mean? And I kind of like that in a racer. But I stayed there for 1 year, and what you got to put in perspective is I'm a guy from Canada. Nobody knows, you're by yourself. There's nobody that basically other than just the guys you work with, and so it was for me it was what I wanted to do. And then at the end of that year, Maurice Petty called me and asked me if I'd be interested in coming to work for them. And
Uncle Morris, as Kyle would call him.
Yeah, he was a great guy, So I entertained that, and I decided to jump on over there. So
when Ricky called in last week, when I had Cliff Champion on, and he knew that you were going to be on this week, because he said that he's like, that's cool. Coincidentally, you have my first and my second crew chief on with you. Yeah. So. And I was trying to remember. I don't remember if I sent him a link or I told him, but somehow he knew, so that was good.
Well, I wanted to get that straightened out tonight. I was not his crew chief at Childress.
I got you.
Kirk Shelmerdine was. I was just a bearing packer, tire changer, load the truck, unload the truck.
Yes. Well, I mean, in your eyes, you might have been the crew chief. And back then, like you said, really, all right, so the crew chief image has changed so much since from back then.
Yes.
Because really back then, it's almost like any of those guys that could do all this stuff on the car. They also knew how to do anything.
Right.
So they could pretty much be a crew chief if they needed to.
Exactly. And like, and working on Winston Cup cars, as opposed to what we did in Canada, we had super late models, and they call the Northwest, which was basically the Busch cars of the Northwest and the West Coast. So I got more and more involved when I was working at Richard Childress's about what we did. They let me do more stuff. So we went to Darlington one time, and we bumped. They had rear steer, banjo cars at the time.
Yeah,
and that's one thing I'd never fool with his bumps.
Yeah,
and I was setting the bump on this car. And I had no idea that one of the bumps, when you drop the bump down, you got to have a longer top in it.
Okay.
So we got it all done. We went to Darlington. Ricky qualified. First lap goes into 3, comes up off 4. The left front bump breaks. I had about 3 threads holding it on.
Oh.
And we wiped that car out.
Yeah.
And back then, it's like you say, it's so much different, because back then, we didn't have a car on the trailer.
Yeah, right.
So into the pits it went. Tore that son of a gun all apart and straightened this, straightened that. All 5 or 6 was just jumped in there. It's just the way it was, you know.
Right.
So I learned my lesson on that. So,
yeah.
So sorry, Ricky, for doing that.
That's what happens. I mean, even as a engine builder and a jack man, you're human.
Absolutely.
Still, you're always going to have some type of a mistake or something. So has Chase ever entertained the idea of getting into racing? Or what does he do?
He's better race car driver than I am, but for some reason I can't get him to.
Yeah.
We ran 2 years at Hickory.
Okay.
And won a championship one year and run second the second year. And the only reason why he ran second the second year is because he had a graduation to go to. So I drove the car for him that night.
Okay.
And qualified second, ended up second.
Oh, how about that?
So, but he lost his points, so he ended up losing the points deal. So
yeah.
No, it's fun. Like you said, I love it too. We've been around it my whole life with him racing super late models and stuff, and working in the shop with him. But it's a lot different deal now than like it is when they were doing it.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's still entertaining, but man, the level the guys are at now and the money that it takes to do that, it's unreal. Just some of the guys that do late model stocks, it's like Cup now almost. It's just every single thing. If it's not right, you're not going to win.
Right.
And if you're going to do that, it's all hands on deck. It's not a weekend hobby thing. If you want to go and run good.
Right.
But
yes. Do you race any with Hut Strickland's son?
Taylor?
I know Taylor's right there, and so is.
Yeah, we didn't race against him, but he was there the time that we was racing. It was 13 and 14. Okay. He was in limiteds and late models and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, okay. So, and so is Jared Irvin, Ernie's son.
Yeah.
Races out.
Oh yeah.
Races out there too.
Yeah, he's still doing that stuff, isn't he? Ernie's and his son.
Yep. He's still doing it. He's still driving. Sure is. Yeah. Are you racing any this coming season?
No, we
sure? Okay.
Yeah, like you said, we don't anymore. I just, like I said, I love it, but it's all that it takes to do that deal. It's
it's your life. It's really what it's like.
We're still around it a lot. We work on all the transmissions and rear ends for a lot of the late model stuff. Not really cup things anymore. So I enjoy that. I really do, and I have time to do other things too. I like riding motorbikes and just stuff like that. So
so speaking of the transmissions and things like that, is that your the business you're in now? Is that right?
Yeah. 88, I got hurt, and I had a little bit of background in building transmission gears for some of the other guys we were racing against. So when I got my wits back with me after that, I had to make a living, had to pay bills, had to eat.
Yeah.
So I got into it full time, and we've been doing that now for 20-some years, 30 years almost, And it's a neat deal. We do a ton of the late model stock, super late model stuff from all around this area, and it's a pretty neat deal. It's a good little gig, and it's just Chase and I in the shop and one secretary, and it's hands-on every piece. So we try to, when it goes out the door, we know exactly what's going out the door, and we've had a pretty good track record with it. We got lucky and got some good customers that run good, so it doesn't hurt at all,
Yeah. Do you ever talk to Joey Knuckles?
Haven't seen Joey for years. Yeah.
I know he does rear end gears.
That's right too. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got hurt in '88, and then you had a basilar skull fracture during the Busch Series Budweiser 200, and you it was tough on you right there because you almost didn't make it, I guess.
Yeah, it was a rough time my whole life. 88, Harry got hurt at Charlotte, broke his leg at Charlotte, and they asked me to drive his car at Dover, and dadgum, we're just starting to go. Here's again, you get this guy from Canada, and he's just kind of picking his way along. Just driving more races, and then Roger Hamby asked me to drive his Cup stuff for 4 races, and that was another step we were looking forward to. But and then I got on that deal and got hurt. Well, it was just basically over because I guess I was about 32, 33 years old. Well, you take a year off anymore and get better, you're done. It just doesn't work. So.
And did you come back and race some in '89?
I tried to, but it was a wonderful fella out of Asheboro, Bill Kirby. He sponsored us when we were driving the Hamm car, the Thomas Brothers car, and he come with me, and he tried to put together a program for us to race again. But there again, it was getting to the point where all the teams had 3 or 4 full-time guys and, your weekend help, and we were trying to do it out of my shop. I was driving the thing to the racetrack, but he bought us a truck, and he bought us cars and motors, but with one guy trying to do it and 2 or 3 friends just coming over to pitch hand, it was over. It just couldn't do it. And then and with the first race we went back to was Rockingham, and this is a perfect example. We went to Rockingham. We built this car. Wasn't a bad car. I mean, I thought it was not a bad car. Well, what happens is when you about kill yourself in a race car, your next race is your audition. So all these years you've been racing, and you're getting a little bit better. You win a couple races. You're starting to kind of
get braver and braver.
Yeah, you just learn stuff. You just learn how to run better.
Right.
So you go back to Rockingham. We get in that race, and we basically struggled. I mean, and what happens is if somebody that's been watching you all these years, they got their pen and pad out, and they say, "Okay, Larry Pollard, about killed himself last time. He's one of these. How's he going to do now?" Done. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes. That makes. I mean, yeah. So I could see that.
Yeah.
Yep. Did you ask the question that Rachel? I know you asked one of them, but it was about how did his being on the pit crew or crew chief and then that kind of stuff help him in his driving? Sorry if you asked that already.
No, I didn't see that.
I thought I saw somebody asked that question earlier. So.
Well, I think it works both ways there. I think my driving background helped me when I was a crew chief for like Richard Petty and Phil Parsons, just because when he said something about how the car was acting, I kind of could relate to it because I've driven, you see. So I think that's a bonus.
Yeah.
And then I think the other way, I'm not too sure it helps you that much, but it also, while you're in the car, and back in the day, you didn't have somebody on the box that had all the input they got nowadays.
Right.
So if you were a crew chief at one time and then all of a sudden you're relaying, you know, the radio to your guy on the box, it did help you because you kind of understood what he was up to too. So it was a nice blend.
And it seemed like it would help even more if, as a driver, if you relayed to your crew chief what you're going to do, and you also found out what he did, what kind of adjustments he did at the time.
Right.
Yeah, and so now they got the telemetry, and they have everything you can see.
Oh man!
But there's other crew chiefs. Rodney Childress is one he drove, and then now he's crew chief.
Exactly.
And that seems to work out really well.
That's what really made Everham and Gordon work so well, is that chemistry of reading exactly what the crew chief can read off the driver.
Yeah, and Everham was a perfect example of that. He run the modifieds for years, and I think he, like you said, he can relate to it.
Yeah, he ran up there in Jersey.
Yeah,
Jersey Cape Yachts nearby there. Yeah, I'm sure he was around there.
Yeah, I bet Janine, she probably knows him.
Wayne and Janine are tuned in tonight. So.
Yeah, what's up, y'all? Sell us a Jersey Cape Yachts here, because we have our big Lake Norman, and so you can get your custom yacht.
Yeah.
Jersey Cape Yachts.
Yeah, when you come to that point when you're going to dream, it's like creating your own dream. When you like to custom make your dream, so custom make your dream yacht. Because, I got a boat, a 14-foot boat. I think about it. This will be the third time in a year because I'm thinking about it now. But I only pull it out of the water and put it back in. But if you got a yacht, you might as well dream. And why not create your own yacht? You can get a hold of Wayne Pugliese up there in Jersey, and he can take care of you, sit down, everything you want. Got a Jersey Cape custom yacht.
Very good.
And they're at 609-965-8650. You can reach them out on Facebook or jerseycapeyachts.com.
So Dickie Dennis was asking about the bump. He's asking what the bump thing is. It's basically the bump steer, and that's kind of has to do with when you go through the corners and you hit bumps. It's kind of like that.
Where do the wheels go when the wheels go through the travel? If they go in the corner and they toe out or in, if they toe in, it's very unstable. But if they toe out, it's slow.
Yeah.
So nobody really knows the magic to what exact number you need for bump, but you do know that you got to have it within a perimeter. And them old rear steer cars, they were hard to work with anyway because the daggum tire end was underneath the oil pan, and you had to try to make it work, and you ended up having a 2-inch bump on the left front to get it so it wouldn't toe out.
Yeah.
But when you put a 2-inch bump on, you got to put the 2-inch bolt in.
Yeah, and it happens. And then you had the old front steer, and certain drivers seem to like, and certain tracks, of course.
Absolutely.
Like front steer and rear steer.
Yeah.
Rear steer, that is.
Well, it got so motors really what dictated why they went to front steer cars, because you couldn't get an oil pan on a rear steer car that was. Then they started finding horsepower in oil pans, so they said, boy, we got to have a front steer car so we can get that big oil pan in there,
Yeah.
So it was just evolution, same old thing.
Yeah, exactly. And there was all kinds of other things that you went through in the evolution of the cars and the engines, of course, and they've definitely been changed throughout the years. But somebody had asked me to ask you a question, and I don't know if the statute of limitations is up from this, and kind of like speaking of the cars, and I won't put you on the spot, but it was the one that Bob Gurrell asked.
Oh, yeah.
That question. And you don't have to answer what he's asking because we all kind of know the answer anyway. Yes, but it had to do with Petty's win at Charlotte in '83. And I don't know if you know Tim Jones. He worked with me over at Roush Yates Engines as well, but he was he mentioned they were talking about the big engine for one thing, whatever. And then he said something about a 383, which is a board and stroke to the 350. Yes. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. To be more exact there, Tim Jones, you were a little bit off, but anyway. But this is one thing, this came up last week about and I think this is what they're talking about. Also left side all around, and Richard knew nothing about it. Is he talking about the left side tires all the way around the car, or do you remember that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And how that happened, this is exactly how that happened. For many races, we were getting beat later on in the race because some of the guys were putting left sides on the right.
Yeah.
And if the run to the finish was a certain amount of laps, you could get by with that. You know what I mean? And back then, NASCAR was different. You know, yes, we had rules, and yes, we were inspected, but it wasn't the same thing. You know, there was a certain way it was done, and if you could work around that edge, you get by with it. And at that race in '83, I know some of the other fellas, no names, they come by and they're looking for left side tires, brought a left side tire. So I knew it was going to happen again. So the last stop, you know, Robin Pember was changing the rear tire, I think, and Randy Cox was my tire guy. I says, air them left sides up. He said, what? I said, just air them up, right side, measure them for me. The race is going on. So last stop comes in, we got to come in for gas, and I said, let's do it. So we put the lefts on the right. I had no idea about the motor, though. I swear to God, I did not know about the motor.
I got you, yeah.
So we put the left sides on there. We get back out there, and Richard, he says, wow, it's a good set of tires, isn't it? Yeah. I says, yeah. I says, go easy. Just go easy. This is a good set.
Yeah.
Okay. He didn't know.
Yeah.
So he goes out there and just kills them, you know. So
yeah.
So we come into the victory lane there, and I leaned in the window, and I says, got left sides on this thing that last stop. And he says, I wondered. And I says, yeah. I says, I just knew we were going to get beat with it again. I said, I didn't want to get beat. He says, that's fine. And his words to me was, we can't get by with 2 left side tires. Heck with them, you know what I mean? I said, well, good, whatever. So sure enough, we're in victory lane there, and here comes the tech guy, and they're measuring the air on the tires. And I guess what they were figuring, if it would be a mistake if you put left sides on with the wrong air pressure, but if they were aired up correct, you meant to put them on.
Yes, right. That makes sense.
But I went up on pit wall when Rich was coming in. I got the left side tire and put on. Robin was ready to go across the wall, Robin Pemberton, and he says, left side. And I said, no, it's okay. Go ahead. And he says, you know, so,
right. Yes.
So it was just a deal. But
and I guess since you had such few laps left, you were able to air them up.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. So that worked out perfect.
Yeah, it did.
It was good timing, and the timing was right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Jim Dooley, he's up in Virginia. He says, again, love the racing stories. Never knew. And yeah, that's one of the things that I love about doing this is you hear the stories that you've really never heard before.
Right.
You know, and that's what we're about here. That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
These stories right here. So I could talk for another couple more hours, but fortunately we do have some time left. Corey Eisenhower, yes. Hey, Larry and Chase missed all the fun at the go-kart track. Corey Eisenhower.
Hey, Corey.
Oh,
yeah. He's my
good guy.
Yeah. He's got his own Facebook page just for Kevin Harvick. He's a huge Kevin Harvick fan.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think every day he posts something about Harvick. So, but I met him. He's my water guy.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
So he brings my water, and he was introduced. I was introduced to him by Scott and Jana Trevison, who were down in Florida. Have you seen Scott and Jana on here? Hadn't seen them yet.
No, anyway. I don't know. They're probably getting geared up for Speed Week soon.
Yeah. Yeah, they may be.
But I did miss a fact here, and I didn't know that our sponsor, Janine Pugliese, they know Ray Everham well. They raced with him at Wall Stadium. They were actually the 1989 track champions for the modified affordable division. I did not know that. Now I know why we got them on the hook.
Yeah,
in racing.
Very cool. Right. When you get Ray Everham in here too, and somebody else I could get sometime is Cliff Graves. Andy Graves.
Andy Graves, yeah.
Yeah. Andy's Cliff's his cousin.
Sharp guy, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's over at Penske, or Cliff is. I don't know where Andy's at right now.
Andy's with Toyota. I know he's one of the big reps. He's flying to Japan and everything like that. So, yeah. Okay. Maybe he's zooming now, though. Yeah. With all this stuff. Yeah. All right, so back to the story. You were at Childress, because we kind of jumped ahead into your racing career. But then you went to work for Petty's as well. Mm-hmm. And then you were with Petty's for a couple of years, and then Phil Parsons.
Yeah. Johnny Hayes, U.S. Tobacco.
Yeah.
I knew him, and he was always entertaining me. He said, man, you come on over. We're starting a new deal with Phil Parsons down in Denver, and I want you to come and run the deal for us. And I said, well, and I loved working with Richard.
Yeah.
I love Linda and Richard. And I'm still great friends with them. I met with Richard here last year, and it was like we hadn't even been apart.
Sure.
We spent the whole day together just talking about stuff. He's just a hero material, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he was fixing to change owners. I think Mike Curb was coming in, and there was going to be a whole change, and I thought it was a perfect time to kind of get away from it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I hated it for them, because Linda would come over after I decided to go. Linda would come to the apartment in Greensboro there where I was living, and she said, "Man, I wish you'd stay. Richard just, you know, he wants you to stay, you know." And I said, "Well, he needs to tell me that."
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, he's just not that kind of guy, you know what I mean?" I said, "Well, I understand that, but I kind of made this deal. I kind of got to go with it, you know." So so I did the deal with Phil for 1 year, and great year. Met some awesome people. I don't know if you remember Richard Jackson.
Yeah.
Absolutely one of my heroes. I named my boy after him.
That's what I've always heard about.
Just a unbelievable guy. I just and then when we started running the Busch cars, he built our motors, and he was just a wealth of information to draw from, because he'd been to all them racetracks, and I'd say, "What do we need to run here? What do we need to do here?" And he was my best friend. You know, he was a good guy.
Some of those guys that I worked with at Roush Yates used to work for him back in the day, so I've heard a lot of good things.
Just unbelievable, man. Yeah.
Yep. Sure did. Phil, was you gonna say something?
No.
Yeah. So, all right. So then you were. All right. I was going to ask you that too. How you ended up leaving Richard Petty's, because I mean, that would seem like that would have been the dream job back in the day. Of course, can you believe that's almost 40 years ago?
Yes.
That's just crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And it was, and they treated me great. Like you say, a kid from Canada, you can't stress that enough. It's not like a guy that's been involved in Winston Cup racing his whole life. It's a guy from Canada that goes plopped in the middle here. Yeah. And in 2 years, you're asked to be a co-crew chief with Richard Petty with Robin Pemberton. It was like, whoa, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And then to win 4 races, we should have won more. It was a dream deal. And if you didn't think that opened up opportunities from other teams, well, that's where they all come from. You know, that's why people were all of a sudden, but the one with Johnny Hayes was the most attractive, you know, so
sure.
That's why I took that deal.
And that sounds like back the way things used to be in NASCAR. You would work for a team, and then you would be, even if you won one race that season, and then there's another team that's going to be an up and coming or a starting team, and they kind of like, they come in with these sponsors that have all this money they want to get into NASCAR. So, you know, here's a bunch of money. So get your team together,
right?
And then they would go and pick guys that were coming from winning teams.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
you know, and that's just the way it is now. Whereas in years past, you had the Pettys and Randleman, you had the Woods brothers in Stewart, Virginia, and you had this over here in what the heck was his name? 15 car.
He had the Bud Moore.
Bud Moore down in Spark. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Everybody stayed their own deal. You know what I mean? And now they're all in Mooresville, and they go eat lunch with each other. Well,
right.
You know, the little secrets and the things changed hands in one day.
Yeah.
You know, so
yes.
Back then you could work on some stuff and nobody know about it except until you showed up at the racetrack. You know. So.
Right. Yeah. A lot of times you make your deal at walking around the racetrack, and you see. And then if somebody sees you over there talking, they're like, "Why were you over there talking to them?"
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So, that happens a lot. All right. So then you worked for Phil Parsons, and then where did you go from there?
Yeah, just worked for Phil, and had some awesome people there. Gary Brooks, you know Gary Brooks, I bet you. You know,
sure
he's
do.
just, I love Gary Brooks.
Still at Penske now.
Yep. Scott Robinette.
Yeah. He was wasn't he a Jackman?
I think he was.
For the 2-car. Yeah. Rusty Wallace, genuine draft, Miller genuine draft car.
Yeah, and just there were some great people there. And then how the whole deal started out was this fellow from Mount Airy come to me and said, "Larry, I want you to start a new Cup team with us in Mount Airy." And him and Ricky Rudd were real good friends, because Bill Anderson from A&W Trucking helped Richard Childress, a co-sponsor, you see. So he got to hang out with Ricky a lot, and Ricky and Bill thought a lot of each other. So then when Bill called me and said, "Larry, I'm going to start a new Cup team. I want you to run the deal for me. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Well, whatever you got going on." So he said, "Well, I got Ricky Rudd, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Okay, well, let me put some figures together on what it would cost to put a Winston Cup team in Mount Airy together." So I did, because by now I had a little bit better idea what it was going to take money-wise.
Yeah.
So Bill Anderson and I, we met in Statesville, North Carolina with his wife. And I went down there, and I laid it out on what it was going to cost to run this Cup team.
Where'd you meet him here?
Huh?
Do you remember where you met him?
At that steakhouse right off across 40.
Okay.
Just as the hospital exit right there. It used to be a Longhorn Steakhouse or something there.
Yeah. Is that where Hedrick was? Do you remember Hedrick, the 41 team?
No.
Okay. Somewhere else.
This side of 77, right?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
All right. So well, that's good.
But anyways, I had 2 weeks to put this deal together. So I'm thinking of Bill. I said, well, what I'm going to do here is there's a fellow out of Greensboro that did this art. He could draw arts. So he painted up a car, drew it on a real nice little format. Anderson Webb Trucking had his colors on it, my number on it. And I took that with me. So we sat down for dinner, and I told Bill, I said, well, this is, if you're going to put this deal, this is probably what you're going to look at. And he said, whoa.
He's impressed.
Yeah, he said, ooh. But then I said, but what I'll tell you what I'll do is let's do this. I said, let's just build a Busch team, and we'll accumulate all our trucks and our equipment, our people, do that a couple of years. And then if you want to do a Cup deal, then at least you'll have a leg in the door, some of your stuff, some of your people. And I'll drive it for nothing.
Oh, yeah.
So he says, I don't know about that, So anyways, 2 days later, he called me back. And Bill Anderson called me back and said, I'll do that deal if you want to. So,
cool.
So I had to quit my deal at Skoll. And
yeah. So there you go again.
Yeah.
And that's the way it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking, I know I got the picture on there, but I'll find it. But I'll tell you what, if y'all want to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of these pictures and things on my website, DHammiam.com. You can go on there, and I'll put the link to this video and the pictures and that type of stuff. And send me your email address, and I will send you one of these decals. There you go. And we also have our Spin the Wheel prize winners here coming up just a little bit. And I got some for y'all as well.
Just wondering what that was about there. Cool.
Oh, yeah, we can spin the wheel, and one of our listeners will win a prize.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, so we'll get that rolling here in a little bit. So, all right, so from there, your where did you end up, or how did that go? So did you end up driving? Is that when you started driving?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
And it was a handshake deal.
Yeah.
Bill Anderson is one of the neatest men I've ever fooled with. I'm still friends with him today. And it was a handshake deal, and he had a little shop back there. We furnished it with what equipment we thought, and he ordered a new race car from old Rick Townsend in Richmond, Virginia. Mm-hmm. We were going to go bush racing. Well, we run Hickory, the first race. They wouldn't let us run Daytona. So our second race back then was Rockingham. So we had built a Speedway car, which back in the day was a good bit different than the short track car. Mm-hmm. So here I am getting the Speedway car ready to get ready for the Rockingham race. And old Bill come over there, and he leaned on the fender, and he says, you ever run Rockingham before? And we'd won there as a crew chief with Richard Petty.
Yes.
And I says, nope, don't think I ever.
Yeah.
So he had a lot of faith in me to commit to what he did, and then have some guy from Canada get in his car.
Yeah.
He said, we'll be all right, he says.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's a good story. That's good stuff. So, all right, so you, Dickie Dennis says Langley, but I don't know, what was that for? And then
Langley is where he won his first race in the Busch Series, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering why he was asking about Langley, so I don't know. Dickie's up in Virginia.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think he's wanting to know how high the fence is or something. I couldn't resist.
Oh,
sorry.
Is that him?
Yeah, that's him.
That's our fence climber.
That's right, yes. All right, so you ran, how many races did you run in the full season?
They wouldn't let us run Daytona. I think we missed one or two, I think.
So is that because they wanted you to get the experience?
Yeah, you
driving?
couldn't. You had to run a certain racetrack, and they looked at you to give your Speedway license, basically. And they knew me as a crewman and from the Cup stuff, but as far as a driver, they didn't know,
So you ran in 4 Cup races, is that right?
Yep.
In '87. Mm-hmm. So how did you end up getting that? Or let's say, what was your connection there?
Well, Roger Hamby. Out of Wilkesboro. He had a lot of different people drive his stuff, and I was driving full time in the Busch Series by then, but I had 2-3 days a week that I could build these gears and stuff for other people. So Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays, if we weren't at the racetrack driving, I would build gears and stuff. Now I'd take them to the racetrack with me and then sell them to the guys that ordered them that I raced against, Steve Grissom and a bunch of other guys.
Yeah.
So I rented a place. I was living in Wilkesboro because I was driving for the Hensleys.
Yeah. And
my wife Debbie was working in Taylorsville, so it was about a halfway deal between Martinsville, Virginia, and Taylorsville. So I needed a place, and Roger Hamby had a place for rent. So I was renting from Roger when one day he come in there and says, "Hey, Pollard," he says, "Want to drive my car?" And I said, "Well, heck yeah," and bless his heart, Roger's one of my favorite people, but he didn't have real good cars. He tried like the world. He was spending every cent he could on to try to produce a race car, and he was smart at it. He knew how to make them work, but he just didn't have the money to do it the way he needed to do it. But for me, again, this kid from Canada said, "Man, you want to drive this car?" I think the first one I ran was at, Richmond, Virginia was the first time I drove his car.
Okay.
And we ended up 12th, you know what I mean? And did not put a new tire in the car. We couldn't. We bought 4 stickers to qualify.
Yeah.
And then after that, back in the day, you had Jimmy Means, DK Ulrich. There was a bunch of teams there that was part of the deal. If they made the show and then they could run the race, that was how they made money. You know what I mean? They could make enough to do it. So when he asked me to drive that car, I knew that. I knew after the first stop you were going to get somebody else's takeoffs. But for me, it was experience, man, to drive a Winston Cup car. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So and I think back then, that's how the racing deal went. You didn't buy your way into a ride. You were asked to drive by a team owner.
Yeah.
And how you did, like Kenny Schrader drove for Junie Dunleavy, and when he got in Junie stuff, he run good. So then the next tier of people will look at you and say, Schrader, you want to drive our stuff?
Yeah.
And that's how it worked, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So when I got in Roger's stuff, we were blessed enough to run halfway decent that people said, well, who's this guy in Roger's stuff? I mean, So that's how that deal worked. And
it also works out how if you're running in a car that's like everybody kind of knows that their cars aren't that great,
right?
But you actually did pretty good in that car, so then you just kind of step on up in it. So
exactly.
I think about Tim Richmond kind of in a way. It's I think about how he kind of did this step through his not very long career.
He was amazing. He was a good guy too. I happened to been blessed to know Tim a little bit, and he was just he was a phenomenal cat. I'm telling you, he could drive a race car.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
That's somebody that I'd love to have actually been around, but that was a little bit before my time.
Yeah, he was. I was crew chief for Richard at the time with Robin Pemberton. I keep saying that because I don't want to steal the air from Robin, because him and I worked together on a deal, and we worked so well together.
Sure.
Robin's still a good friend of mine, and we made decisions. We made them together,
Yeah.
But after the race, we'd broken, and I was walking back from the hauler to the garage, and Tim was leading the race, and he come down pit road on the white flag lap. So he come through the pits, and I'm walking up there, and he comes flying through there, and I says, "What you doing, man?" kind of thing. And I said, "Get out there, one to go." So he peeled out there and he went around, and but that was just Tim. And then after the race, he calls me. He says, "Man," he says, "what's the deal there?" And I said, "Man," I said, "if you would just calm down a little bit." I said, "You got more talent than anybody I've ever seen, but if you would just calm down." And he says, "Really?" And I said, "Well, yeah." So what happened after that deal was every week, Monday or Tuesday, Tim would call me and say, "How'd he do this week?" That's the kind of a guy he was to me. You know, he was cool. He was just good.
Wow, that's great. And I was talking to Cliff last week about it, and I asked him if he was involved in the Days of Thunder movie at all. probably if younger people watch it, like what driver is Days of Thunder about? Do you know the answer to that question? Have you seen the movie?
I think I did once, but like I said,
it came out
my time.
Okay, yeah. Well, it came out about somewhere around 1990.
Yeah,
I believe it was 92, maybe.
Yeah.
It was probably more like 92.
Yeah,
that was with the
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you would think, it really, if you watch it now and you don't know any different as far as the time frame, you might think Jeff Gordon, just whatever. But it was about Tim Richmond.
Right.
And so I was just wondering how much of that in your eyes is true to life with Tim Richmond, and let's say Harry Hyde,
Yeah, well, Harry Hyde for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That was Harry Hyde, 100%.
Yeah.
He was a cool dude too. He kept it under his hat. He was just he had it going on. But it's pretty about the way it was. Tim was awesome, man. He was just, and he ruffled a few feathers, but as far as friend, he didn't. He was just a good guy.
And there towards the end, it seems like he could have been treated differently by NASCAR.
Me too.
In my opinion.
Me too. I agree. Yeah, it was
Pretty
a sad deal.
Did you ever get to meet Marty Robbins?
Never did. Yeah.
Because he's another one I would like to admit. And I asked the King about him one of the last times I saw Richard Petty, and he's like, he was a driver that just happened to be really good country music singer. And then he's like, well, he was a really good driver.
Yeah.
That just happened to be able to sing. So.
Right.
And then Donnie Allison was telling me about there was this Holiday Inn down there at Little Rock Road, which is just right down the street from where I lived.
Okay.
And he said they would go down there and hang out all the time when they had their Charlotte races. And Tim Richmond was there one night. He was going to play. No, they were asking him to play because he said everywhere they went, people would ask him, "Hey, sing us a song," and he would say,
Tim Richmond.
No, I'm sorry, Marty Robbins."
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my bad. I probably said Tim, but I'm trying to get this in quick. But it was Marty Robbins. Yeah,
it's all good. Calm down.
Yeah, I know, right? That's what he's telling me before the show, and I'm like, listen, once the show starts, everything's fine.
Oh yeah, it's all good. Yeah.
But I like to get back into hearing your stories. But anyway, I got to finish this one. That Marty Robbins was saying that everybody asked me to sing, pretty much everywhere I go. But he said, I'm under contract with whoever they're singing. I need to write this down. His record label. And he said, but after the show, I might sing a song or two. And he said that he would sit there and just sing all night to people. That was very cool.
They say he was a good guy.
Yeah, that would be a good one. Okay, so the rest of your career. So tell us where you went from there. You were driving, and you went and ran in 4 Cup races, and then you ended up. Is that when you ended up getting hurt?
Yeah,
and then,
It was just like you say. It was.
Yeah.
We were slowly getting this progression going, getting in a little better car every year, getting my 4 Cup race. We didn't want to run 5 because you lost your rookie status. And Buddy Baker was talking to me about running his car the next year, and DK Ulrich was, it was kind of a step up.
Yeah.
And then bam, you get hurt. Well, it just stops it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So but I was proud of what I did. We didn't blow anybody's doors off as far as records, but again, this kid from Canada come down here with nothing, not a dollar, just didn't know who you're going to work for or whatever, and do this deal. So I've met so many good people on this ride that we've had up until that. I'm blessed. I mean, got to run a Winston Cup, got to run 200 mile an hour at qualify at 200 mile at Daytona Beach.
Yeah.
So some guy from Canada has got that in his repertoire. Man,
Absolutely.
That's pretty cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just I'm just so blessed to, like I say, with all the people I met along the way and got to do what I kind of wanted to do. It was cool.
Yeah. And you were in an awesome, great time.
Yes. Oh yeah. We see that now. We do work on some of the fellows that work on the Cup teams now, and they run Saturday night races, and they'll bring our stuff to us to fix the rear ends of transmission stuff, and I'll talk to him about exactly what we're talking about right now, and he says, "Man, it's just so different." Yeah. We got one guy that does quarter windows, and he doesn't know what spring they run, but back in the day, you had 5 guys in the shop, and they had to know a little bit about everything.
That's
you know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the guy that did the gears. He did the transmissions and gears as well, but he'd also do all the electrical in the car.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
What'd you have?
Yeah, there's very few of those guys, but there are a couple of them that are still in the garage. You'll see the old fossils like myself that walk around, and you'll say, "You're still," and they know every component on the car.
Sure.
Now you're talking about all the personalities and the friends you made throughout the years. Every week we have one Sterling Marlin story. Do you have a good Sterling Marlin story for us?
Not really.
No, that you can tell.
No, yeah, that you can tell. Yes.
We'll have to pick another driver then if you don't know, if you don't really have any about Sterling. Maybe like were you ever around Earnhardt, Dale Earnhardt Sr.?
Yeah, we did some stuff with Dale when he asked me to, when I got hurt, and after that his daughter Kelly was driving, and he called me one day and says, "Pollard," that's how he talked. I don't know if he knew Dale Sr. or not, but he was a exceptional man. I mean, what you see out front wasn't him. And he just called and say, "Pollard," he says, "you interested in showing my daughter how to race?" And I says, "What do you got going on?" He said, "Well, she's in this car, and I just need somebody to take her to these racetracks and show her how to race. I haven't got time to mess with blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Okay, well, I'd be interested. You know, we'll do something like that." He said, "Where do you want your stuff? My shop at yours?" And I said, "Well, just get it down here." I said, We'll fool with it, you know." So we got all his stuff down there, and we raced with her for about 6 races. And she's a good little race car driver. You know, she could get it done. I'm telling you, she was feisty as the world, and probably a little bit more aggressive than she needed to sometimes, but she was learning. Yeah. But she could do it.
She was always the better of the 3 drivers.
I'll swear that right now. Always. I'll say it right now. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I saw her racing out at Concord, and I think it was around 1990. It had to be somewhere right there because I was still in college, and it was her and Dale Jr. were running like first and second. And I was like, wow, that's her, right? Kelly.
Yeah, she, and old Dale, he'd call me after the races. "How'd you do, Pollard?" And I said, "Man, I'm really proud of her. Tonight she did this," and then we just talk about different things. And he says, "Well, it's good." He said, "I just want to make sure," because I can't, you know, if I call her, she won't tell me, you know. I mean,
yes,
you
sure,
know.
Yeah.
And then one night we ran at, I think it was Tri-County or someplace like that, and we'd run, and she'd done a great job, but she got spun out late in the race, and maybe a little bit more aggression, whatever. She spun out, and the poor little thing, she come in the pits, and she just broke down. She got in the truck, and she started crying, and we're loading the stuff up, and I went in there, I sat down, and I says, "Kelly," I said, "Man, you did a heck of a job tonight, you know." And she goes, "Man," she says, "my dad's going to be disappointed in me."
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was her.
I said, "Man, don't worry about it. He's proud of you." You know what I mean? So that's just the way that worked out, you know. But yeah, they were good people. If you got 1 second, when I was with Patty's, I was friends with Gary Nelson and Bobby Allison. Yeah. And one of the off weekends, Bobby called me and says, "Hey, I'm going back to your hometown place, west coast of, you know, Washington State, Utah and stuff like that." He said, "You want to go with us?" And I says, "Yeah, I think I can handle that." So I called Marie, says, "You know, I'm going to run down to Washington State with Bobby Allison this weekend. I didn't know how to go over, you know what I mean?"
Yes.
So we fly out in Bobby's plane. We flew to Denver, opened a mall in Denver, raced a race in Omaha, Bobby, flew the plane, did all these openings, raced 3 races, went to Yakima, Washington, raced. Then and here I am trying to keep up. I'm just going along for the ride. Sure. And this son of a gun, he is so tough. Yeah. He raced all them races, opened that mall, and then we get going on the way home Sunday night. We fly out of Yakima, and he's up at like 4 in the morning. He said, "Okay, Pollard, you ready to go?" You know, so he's okay. So we got a coffee. We get in his plane. Gary Nelson and his wife, Judy and Bobby, and myself. So we take off out of Umatilla, Washington, wherever we were at in this little old plane. And old Judy looks back and she says, "Hey, Larry, hang on to your cup." I said, "Okay." And Bobby does one of them barrel rolls. Yeah. But they do it so that the gravity is
Oh, yeah. So
keeping the coffee in your cup.
Yeah.
So we take off, and he does one of them things like that. And I'm oh boy, and I said, hang on, I'm going to drink. He said, don't worry about it. She'll do all right. And old Bobby did that. But I guess the point I'm making is that son of a gun, he raced all them races, drove the plane. He was unbelievable. We landed in Alabama, and I've been with him now for like 4 days or 3 days, whatever it was. I was flat wore out. I was a young man. He was 40-some years old. He gets out of the plane, and I said, well, I got to get back to work for Monday morning. So I drove from Alabama back to Level Cross, North Carolina. I got to Atlanta, and it's like it's probably 9 o'clock in the morning. And I am wore out. I'm in my old truck, and there was road construction, and anyways, we stopped.
Yeah.
Well, guess who fell asleep and went into the ditch?
I was going to say, is that what happened? Yes. That would have been me too, after all that.
And Bobby got off the plane, and he had to go do some kind of a promotion.
It's funny.
So
that's great. That's like even Kel Yarborough, I guess he's another one. It was pretty much like that.
Got to be, yeah.
And then would fly, and do you think that it was different? All right, so the drivers now and the drivers then, it's like two totally different spectrums, I guess, for most of them, because I'm sure there's some that are tough now that didn't grow up, let's say, with a silver spoon.
I think you're right, but I think when us older drivers look at these newer cars, we, in my opinion, some of these newer guys wouldn't even get in the cars that we rode.
Sure.
Like, just like a Daytona.
Yeah.
200 mile an hour at Daytona, no headrests, no leg restraints, no AC, no full enclosed carbon fiber seat. You had an old banjo seat with a brace under your arm. You had, for the race, you put one of them straps under your left arm and hooked it to your helmet so that your helmet wouldn't, your head wouldn't fall off halfway through the race. But when you did that, what did you do? You kept tightening it up because
circulation in your arm.
All of a sudden your left arm is now numb. Because you've got this all pulled up here to hold your head in. So I think, to answer your question, I think it was a different frame of mind back then because you just wanted to race. You put that dangerous thing aside. But I think it also determined how fast some of the guys run.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Because I'd say it's comparable to the newer tractors, like the new Caterpillar tractors, and how easy it is to move the gears and stuff. Because I saw a guy yesterday with trying to move a big Cat tractor, a D6, and he was getting it in gear and stuff, and it's a lot different than this day and age.
Yeah, that may or may not have been me. So, yeah, that's right. Nothing to it.
Yeah, I think they got some great race car drivers now. Don't get me wrong. I think they're awesome. Yeah. But the old guys, what they lacked in they just had it in heart. You know what I mean?
If you look on YouTube, I'm sure they have a video of Richard Petty back in the 60s somewhere. He hit the wall, and it shows his whole torso basically coming over and his head almost touching the passenger side.
Yeah.
They were brave souls, boy, I tell you.
And you're one of them.
And well, and that's the thing, man. It's like you're a living legend. I mean, you really are, and a lot of people, you've done what a lot of people want to do, and never make it to that. And you've and there's not many. Okay, so you can look and add up all the things, however many people there are in this world, and who has drove a Winston Cup car, who's gone 200 mile an hour.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things, So I'm sure your son's proud of that.
Well, I hope he is. I'm awful proud of him. I know that. So.
Yeah, that's cool.
But and in that equation that you talk about, never was it money. None of these rides you took, or at least I didn't. Yeah. It was just because you love to race. That's all what you ever did.
Well, when he asked you if you wanted to drive his car, you were like, yeah. I'm sure you didn't say, well, let's see, how much money are you going to pay me?
Right.
It was like, yeah,
I agree.
Of course I do.
I agree. Yeah.
And, yeah, it's very cool.
And it was funny because how I got the next race, it was Richard Childress was trying to bring Doug Wolfgang into Cup racing.
Okay.
And Richard Childress called me and said, would you take Doug Wolfgang over to Wilkesboro Speedway and he sent us a bunch of tires and he sent us a motor to run in Roger's stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, just go over there and would you kind of show him what you need to do to get around the racetrack? So Doug, with his wife and at the time one child, I think it was, they stayed at my house in Wilkesboro, and we went to the racetrack 2 days in a row, just going over there and making laps. And I love Doug Wolfgang. He's a dirt racing son of a gun. I mean, I went to a couple races after we had our little deal at Wilkesboro, and he'd asked me to go to a couple races and just hang out with him. And he can flat get a dirt car going, but he could not get a Winston Cup car. He on the second day of our little deal, he just sat down with me and said, Larry, I don't think I can get this. So so that's how I got my second ride, was because Roger Hamm asked Childress, he said, well, man, we got these motors, and is it okay if Larry drives it? Mm-hmm. So Richard said, yeah, go ahead, so that's how I got my second ride.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I remember your name back in the day, and I probably have, chances are I probably have one of those little hero cards somewhere. So I meant to go through and look through all that stuff, but as I mentioned, I was a little bit busier today than I wanted to be. So
that's all good.
Yeah,
all good.
One of these days. All right, so I was just making sure I had a few notes here, but I wanted the things that I wanted to make sure that I covered.
Sure.
And my these chairs sink down sometimes. That's what I'm having an issue with right now. So sorry.
Getting shorter.
Did want to give a shout out. Wanted to give a little shout out tonight for a happy 7th anniversary to driver Brian Scott and his lovely bride Whitney Scott.
Yeah. So is Scott on here with us tonight? He's probably watching. Sometimes he'll comment.
Sure.
Yeah. So with Brian Scott, the old he drove some for us. He drove some for the Ford camp when I was building engines over there. Yeah. And he's tuned in before. Yeah, he was with the Petties.
Childress, I think too.
And then he decided that he just didn't want to go racing anymore. He wanted to go back and do some family business stuff. Yep. So that's what we did, which is very respectful.
Shore Lodge, isn't it? Something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Shore Lodge out there in Wyoming, Montana.
Yeah, somewhere out there.
Beautiful country.
Yes.
It's like any sport. If you're going to do it well, you got to be dedicated, and you just, some of the other stuff that you'd like to do, you don't have time for it. You can't do it. You've got to stay on track, and it is taxing. I mean, it's just like when you're on board, you better be on board. With
saying that, Chase, are you spending time on simulators?
No.
At tracks?
Right.
I'm just saying, the new drivers, the new drivers have that available, and the simulators are amazing. So,
like you said, with anything, it's if you're gonna be great at whatever you're wanting to do, it's all in, And if that's not your thing, then there's
just don't dabble with it.
Right. There's it's all or nothing, But there's not much fun in going there and hanging out 10th or 12th, and and that's cool. That's still racing, But if you really just want to race and win, that's
based on the level of dedication.
Yeah, absolutely.
And all the technology available now versus what you had.
And today, money comes into it a lot.
Sure.
It isn't like you go to a scrapyard like they did and cut spindles off of another car, and it's just so different now.
Yeah.
But
or use one set of heads for qualifying for a whole year.
Yeah, there you go.
So Bob Tracy, do you know Bob Tracy? So he was the one that he's I guess he's Brian Scott's
father-in-law.
He's
out there right now. He flew out the other day. He's with them this weekend.
Yeah, he's out there hunting apparently. And so Chad Hyder had mentioned that I think he said that Junior says that Kelly was always better than him or something like that.
Really?
I'm sure he didn't say it too many times.
No, I don't think so.
I don't know. He may have let that slip one time. So, but we were talking about your accomplishments and things, and I did have this written down. You were the first foreign-born driver to win a NASCAR Grand National race.
Yes, sir.
That was on August the 9th, 1987. At Langley Speedway. That's about the time I was trying to win the high school championship in football. So
Just the young buck, aren't you?
Yeah, I guess so. But I was definitely a NASCAR fan. I was a NASCAR fan from the as far back as I can remember, which would have been somewhere in the mid-'70s. where I was a Cale Yarborough fan.
Oh yeah.
And my first favorite driver was David Pearson.
Right.
So
good choice. He was something else. He was pretty smooth, old David.
Yeah. And I know his record actually was better than, and I brought this up to Donnie Ellison too. And I almost got scolded. No, I hit a nerve, I think is what it was. But I said his record is actually better than Richard Petty's if you look at the number of races won versus number of races run versus won. Yeah,
I see.
That kind of stuff.
Right.
And then Donnie's like, well, I had the best record for.
Well, he slammed his fist down. Everybody needs to go watch that Donnie Ellison deal with David Hamm had on there.
Yes.
Boy, Donnie got. Let me tell you about.
So I got him back and I called him Bobby. No, I'm kidding.
Good gosh.
I did it.
Yeah, I know.
No, it's so good.
Yeah, but Bob's one of my favorite people. He's just he's good people.
Yeah. So it was a compliment to Donnie. That's all I was doing.
Oh, absolutely right.
But we're gonna get we're gonna get Donnie and Bobby on here too.
Good deal.
Yeah. So when I do that, you should come back in.
I will. Yeah.
And hang out with us. And of course, you're always welcome to come in anytime.
Oh, this is cool. Yeah, it's just been enjoyable, this deal.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And the next time you come in, I'm gonna try to just spend 2 days on this instead of like saying I'm gonna do it this day and then I don't end up having everything ready, my intro and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Because it just seems like something always comes up and knocks me off the saddle, I guess you could say.
Do we have a guest lined up next week? Have you got that?
Yes.
To announce?
Yes. I have. I'm going to announce that here in just a minute after we go through some of these. Chad Hutter says, he's talking about that was hilarious. And, we didn't say hey to the beer man. And tell the beer man what we asked earlier. We asked
about the Sterling Marlin?
Yes.
Yeah, he was here at the time. He was
was he?
on. Yeah, he was on. That's why.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, my bad. So
no problem.
But our beer man is, I don't know if you remember, well, you may not have known him. That was kind of before his time, but he was the beer guy for the Coors Light team always for many, many years.
Whenever you rolled into town, he would be there a day before the like Wednesday or Thursday, and he would cover the town of Coors Light posters, and that was the beer man's
job, man.
Yeah.
That and dropping off a case to almost every eligible driver, shall we say.
That's right. So, all right. So, Rachel says, thank you Larry for coming up and sharing your stories and experiences. But
that's awesome. Yeah.
All right. So, what do we all want to? We need to spin that wheel and figure out who's going to win. Okay, maybe not yet. Yeah. All right. So my guest next week is Chris Buescher. So the Cup Series driver now. He won the Xfinity. I was trying to think, it was a Sprint or Xfinity or whatever. He won the Busch Series championship a few years back, and
it was his cousin James won the Truck Series.
That's the Truck Series.
Did Chris win the?
Yeah,
Busch
in the
Series?
60 car. Yes.
Oh, okay.
The 60, I got the hat to prove it. I mean, I got the ring to prove it. Actually, I need to bring my ring in. That's what I need to do. Exactly. So I need to bring my ring and my hat next week and the little hero cards, because what I'm gonna start doing is have when I have a guest in, sign the hero cards, and then I call them hero cards for lack of whatever.
Right.
And then I can send them as a prize whenever we have a prize winner. So yes.
Shoot, yeah. So,
Chris will have his spin on, he's, obviously a younger Cup Series driver.
Yeah.
And so, but he does have, he's a racer, you could definitely say he's a race car driver,
Yeah.
And
you proved that this year. A little bit I watched him. He's getting up on it,
Yep. He's doing very well. And he's worked his way up through the ranks. And so very well deserving. He finally got his opportunity, his break, and to move into a good, Cup Series team. And I can see him continuing doing great things.
Well, that takes heart. He's got desire, and that's what it's about,
Yep.
And if you got some talent and the rest of the things that go along with it, you're gonna succeed. It's gonna take you time to do it, as opposed to somebody says it's just got a ton of money and he gets in a ride and not me, he's out. But a guy like Chris, he's gonna keep digging, learning, and you can see that now. The last couple of years, he's really matured.
Yeah, for sure.
I think anyway.
We were talking about here some of the drivers that come from other types of racing and into the Cup Series or Busch Grand or whatever series, and they're trying to race. But I know some that I've seen in the past. And was it Steve Kinzer? All right, was he one that came in?
Yeah,
yeah, he did race in the Quaker State for
That's right.
Kenny Bernstein deal. Yeah.
Yep, that's right. So he was one that really tried
and struggled.
He
really struggled,
Yep.
And that is taking zero away from his racing ability, because he is one super race car driver, but he struggled in the Cup cars. He just couldn't get it,
Yep, that's right. And I know one of my personal experience was with David Steele, who drove in sprint cars and stuff down in Florida, and he come up and was driving a Busch National car, but he just decided it wasn't for him.
Right.
And it is what it is. But then you got like Larson, who's does really good in that, and can transfer it over into the Cup Series. So
he's talented son of a gun right there.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. All right. So there's lots of compliments coming in and thank yous and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
And then we'll do our prize winner here. So we'll have to spin the wheel. So, but here's the deal: if you're the prize winner, you need to go onto my website, and what you do is click. There'll be a box pop up that says, give me your email address for your chance to win prizes and that kinds of things. So when you go on there, you put your email address in, and you, on the message part, give me your mailing address, because I can't send it to you if I don't have your mailing address. And I also want to shout out to the Troutmans. I'm pretty sure they're watching tonight. They don't always comment, but they watch every week, the whole family, the Troutmans, as does my mother, Jackie Hamm, watches also.
Diligently.
Yes. And that's right, yes. And she should.
And your biggest critic, too, which is good.
Yeah, she's great. But you can always go back on and comment. And I would really wish more of you would do this, but go back on here and comment and ask questions. And I will make sure that Larry gets the questions, and he can actually go back on there as well and watch the video.
I'm going to, yeah.
Yep. And so there. Spin the wheel to see who's the winner. All right, so it looks like Kit Rodriguez is our winner today. I could see the wheel I could see it on the screen here. So yes. All right, so Kit Rodriguez is our winner. I'll get your prize in the mail, and I actually sent out prizes yesterday into our mailbox. So that would have been the last round of prizes. I'll do them at the beginning of the month. Yeah, the beginning of the month. So next week will be February the 1st. Will be next week. The moment I have Chris Busher on with me, or with us next Monday, I will get those. Yes. Oh, yes. Lee Troutman says, yes, we are watching. Very cool. So that's Lee and Brett and Carolyn Troutman there watching this from Statesville.
Good deal.
Yeah. So thanks again, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
This is awesome. I appreciate you asking me. Yeah.
Come back anytime.
Yeah.
Come back. What you doing next Monday? No, I'm just kidding.
I'll be back.
Well, come on. Yes. Heck yeah. Come on anytime. I mean, bring the pizza.
A lot of fun talking about the old days, and it's changed in so many ways, but it's still the same. There's still good hard racers out there. Mm-hmm. It's just I was in a different time, but the racers of today are just as much into it as us old guys were. That Yeah. But I appreciate you asking me on the show. It's great.
That's a good point you make there too, because it's like we always talk about in the NASCAR family, the racing family, anytime somebody has hardships or anything happens, it's like that's the first people that are right there to help you and to bring you back up and all that kind of stuff. No matter how competitive we are with each other, we all have that same bond.
Yep. Well, it's like when I got hurt, if you got 1 second, when I got hurt, Richard Childress, he flew my wife and Harry's wife to Dover. The Hansleys, Jimmy Hensley and his wife were just unbelievable. The Will Lynn, David Smith, Kirk Shelmerdine, they came to the hospital in their uniforms. Johnny Hayes from U.S. Tobacco, he wanted to pay for everything, you know what I mean? And it was just all these people that you take for granted you're with around them every weekend. But when something like that happens, they just jump on board. It was just such a nice feeling, just as family,
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a fraternity. It really is,
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned David Smith. He was another great one.
Oh my God, Dave was good.
We lost him a few years back, I guess.
Sure did. And I stayed. He drove me to the motel every day after work when I first started at Richards, because I didn't have a ride. You know what I mean? So he was I got Dave and I were good friends. I just hated it for him.
Yeah. I know. That was tough. He was a fighter right there till the end.
He's fought a long time.
He had a strong faith.
Good Christian, man.
Yes, he was.
Exactly, he was. Yes, he was.
Yeah. All right, very good. Well, thank you, Phil, once again for coming in.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And Larry, Pollard, and Chase.
And my son Chase, he works at the shop with me and just valuable. He's
good.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day you're working on something, and it's hard to find employees that are into the job, not just punch the clock, get their pay, and get gone.
Yes.
You know the guy's into it when you're working, and you've got to answer phones, and you've got to address this and that, you know, and customers call and stuff. And Chase come up and say, "Hey, Dad, you going to put that washer in there?" So you know he's watching, and he cares, and that is so cool. You know, I'm so proud of him for that. So.
Absolutely. And he wants to do it, too. That's
right.
Good.
Right.
That's good. Good for him. Well, thank y'all. Thanks again. I want to say Jody Brutch, where you are, UCH.
Jody, she's from my hometown area up north.
I don't think I said hello to her.
Yeah.
So, and thanks everybody for tuning in. And we'll see you next Monday evening for Chris Boucher right here in the studio with us. So get your questions ready, get them together. Check out my Facebook page, Racing Roots with Hamm, and you'll get like track updates every day and different drivers and all that kind of stuff. So keep up with the roots of racing right there. So good night, everybody.
Over and out.
Cool.